Hi, everyone. I apologize quite a bit about not being able to be there, but force majeure being what it is, and tropical storm just sitting on Roatan Island. Um, Unfortunately, I've had to make separate travel plans, but yeah, I'm here at the airport in Austin. So I appreciate you all watching this live video because I'll actually be on the plane and my scheduled time is. So without further ado, I'm going to get into sharing a bit about my topic, which is just really actually practical on the ground legal engineering. So I'm going to start with my sense of what legal engineering is. I know we've already had a conversation about that, but I'd like to bring in my particular perspective, um, and then I'll go into the HATS protocol, which is a particular use case. So now I'm going to share my entire screen. All right, here we go. Infinity mirror. Ooh. Okay, so what is legal engineering? Um, okay, so uh, legal engineering is law tech that optimizes and reimagines the law. Why do we care? Well, if we're honest, there's lots of room to improve legal process. Uh, it's really expensive to hire lawyers. I've been part of many early stage projects that never get off the ground because of the legal costs and the legal burden, not because of engineering or other hurdles. So arguably 33% of governance is GDP, and the vast majority of governance has somewhat to do with law. Most politicians also are lawyers. Um, so that's something we should also consider when we're thinking about the costs of law, not just transaction costs for setting up businesses or doing deals or something like that. And then KYC compliance. This one I like to bring up. Eric Bremen has this really great quote that, yeah, over 99% of terrorists and criminal financial proceeds don't actually get caught by KYC. So arguably KYC is more about tax revenue and such, not about the espoused reason it's there. And we all know how much of a burden it is to KYC. Also, it's working with these early stage projects. I think it's very reckless to have them collect all this personal information they do, and even the big sophisticated organizations get hacked, and people's personal information gets stolen. So it's also, if we think about consumer protection, KYC is it's a double-edged sword for sure. Okay, and then what about paying taxes? Not only is it painful to pay taxes, but the process of actually knowing what one owes for tax is takes lots of attention. It's incredibly, um, um, I think, hard on all of our mental health, and why it just makes us have animosity towards our governments. Okay, so legal engineering is an emerging profession, so that's one of the reasons we talked about what it is in the first place. It started with Charles Goldfarb for certain in 1986 because he invented markup language by thinking about how we could use redline drafting to better parse documents. He was a lawyer, Harvard, JD, but working at MIT. So Cambridge, Massachusetts is still one of the um, uh, genesis points of legal engineering, and then the other genesis point is Stanford, and Stanford not so much because MIT and Harvard next to each other, but just because of how important high tech is. So Stanford is pretty much all departments in Stanford focus on high tech arguably. So anyway, so then Nick Zabel, he's another example of a legal engineer, and he made smart contracts. With that one, he took he looked at what program language does, compared it to the three elements of contract, which is privity. So only the parties that are contracting have a legal relationship. Consensus addendum, the parties have to understand each other, and then consideration. And so arguably the first two consensus privity and consensus addendums. Computers do that better than humans. As humans, sometimes for privity, we think we're involved in other people's business when we're not. And then definitely with interpreting, which is consensus addendum, meeting of the minds, so everyone understand each other. A computer interpreter is the same on all these different computers. It's pretty amazing we've done that standardization. But in any case, we know that there's not going to be a different way of understanding instructions from computer to computer. But the one area computers don't do is consideration. They're just willing to fulfill any request that's given to them. They don't have any selfish bones in the body, that kind of thing. So what David did is he constrained programming language and said, you know what, if we're going to execute processes, and then we're going to get paid for it. And through that, we're able to create an incentive mechanism, because at the end of the day, it is human, for distributed computing. So if we didn't add that extra element to programming language, that extra contractual element, then arguably we would never have been able to have all these validators around the world that are maintaining shared states for us all. And I also think, though, learned hand, he's arguably a legal engineer, at least part of his judgment, because he used actual economic mathematics. So for me, at the heart of it, it's about empiricism. So I would say maybe the very first legal engineer is Pierre de Fermat, and he was instrumental in the development of calculus with his add equality. Okay, so so here's a working definition of it. Legal engineers are endeavoring to enhance the rigor and precision, the legal fields. So essentially it's just empiricism, trying to get as close to empiricism as possible, which is, by the way, why Prospera is such an amazing legal invention. And I think everyone involved should be very proud, especially the Honduran lawyers. And I hope the rest of the legal community really recognizes Honduran lawyers, arguably considering Nobel. I know that's fairly like a hyper statement there, but really what Prospera has enabled is finally a way to have petri dishes and an empirical process, as in law at least, because not only do we have a regulatory environment while it lasted that was the full vertical from city all the way up to federal, but it also which is the ZA innovation, which is amazing. And just in the sandbox, so not everywhere, but just this particular sandbox, as you'd expect in any lab. It's not going to be the whole world, but we do experiment on the whole world if we don't have labs to do them. So that energy is going to get out somehow, and it's better that it's done in bite-sized amounts that don't proliferate or are applied to everyone. They're large, like for instance, social media. That's an example of an experiment that we're all part of. TikTok. We don't have a choice. We have that. Anyway, so the Prospera innovation on top of the ZA innovation, which is the ZA innovation again is that vertical. The Prospera innovation is that each company gets to pick its own regulation. So then we get to have lots of experiments. So not only do we get to do experiment on any part of the vertical that we need to, or all of them if we need to, from city all the way up to federal, but we also get to this company do it one way, another company do it another way, or even the same company, okay, switch it up now, and then with insurance as the check and balance. And for me, microeconomics, my perspective on microeconomics, insurance has a similar value as trade. It's just very clear benefit to everyone if we share each other's risk. For one person that carries all that risk, it would be a death sentence if it actually happened. But if we all carry a little bit of it, then it's actually not that much of a harm, and we all can move forward. So I'm a big fan of Prospera, and I hope we can still continue to experiment in Honduras and perhaps in other jurisdictions. Okay, so now here's the provocation. Is laws, horse and buggy to car transition? Is law transitioning from horse and buggy? Pardon me. Is law transitioning from horse and buggy to car? So what I mean there is basically, if we look at the industrial age, the first industrial age was muscular industrialization, so from muscles to machines, and now we're doing brain industrialization, from brains to machines. So I am focusing on mechanization of industrialization and not automation, because actually, if you think about how cars have developed, as this analogy goes, and it's to me, the more I think about it, the more apt the analogy is. We also use vehicles, or legal vehicles, but we get our clients from point A to point B, uh, just like a taxi driver. So so this analogy, so as we've been fleshing out, actually, it's quite apt. But if we look at cars, we haven't immediately automated them. We're only now automating them, and it's still a big hassle. But we first had to figure out what a freeway is, and all this other complexity of moving at breakneck speed. The seatbelts are needed, which in the day of horse and buggy, that wasn't at all considered. It was animal husbandry. A seatbelt, what having to go 40 miles an hour minimum. What? These are absurdities in the horse and buggy era, but in the car era, they're necessities. So that's what I expect as well. And I do believe that we're unnecessarily causing or uh, adding risk, as well as people are looking at what we're up to, and making them concerned when we talk about automating the law, rather than we're first mechanizing the law, moving in that hyper uh, um, change state, and then once we understand how that modality works, we can then automate it more and more. It's not like this has to be such a hard and fast sequence, because we didn't have LLMs when cars were first being developed, but we should definitely have a deep understanding of mechanization before we full on try to automate it. So they're actually very different. Okay, so um, here we go. So this is the image so far that I've gotten ChatGPT to do. So we should spend some work on that. This is a call to action for anyone around. If you want to help me with this meme of the legal profession going from horse and buggy into the car era, but again, it's not for muscles, but it's now for brain power. That would be fantastic. And on an economic level, this is what I hope happens, is that the Baumol effect right now, if we look at where law is in the Baumol effect, legal services, it's not as bad as education, but it still is it's worse than haircuts. So we're paying our lawyers more purchasing power than we're paying our hairstylists, and I believe that we can actually get law to be on the other side of the Baumol effect. So certain professions, if they're hi again. Sorry about that. I lost the recording because there needed to be someone else in here, so it just shut itself off. Okay. So I don't know where I left off, but let's see. So uh, yeah. So basically, horse and buggy law right now is in horse and buggy stage, and it's transitioning to car stage. We've got kind of the early Mercedes, but we don't have any Model T Fords. This conversation here is kind of talking about the really early concepts of an assembly line kind of thing, and economically, more practically, what we're talking about here is getting law from being above the Baumol equilibrium line to below the Baumol equilibrium line. So yeah, law, the purchasing power for law is getting worse and worse over time, but it's not as bad as education. Let me see how out of whack education is. It's not far away from it. It's worse than haircuts, and those are a lot more expensive than they used to be. And but then yeah, compared to consumer electronics, which are actually we're getting more and more purchasing power with them. That's what I want to see. I want law to be on that consumer electronic side, where we're making at least a good chunk of the law, some parts of the law, where we're actually over time we're able to do more and more legal relationships with each other, more and more social complexity. And as Lawrence Lessig says, law is the software of society. So if the software society, if society is getting more and more costly for us to engage with each other, who cares how fancy our electronics are. We're going to be atomized and lonely and disconnected from each other. So it's critical that law is something that maintains um, pro-social development instead of regressing, which is arguably doing. And yeah, maybe it's regressing because there's so much pressure from the information age on how fast everything's going. But so be it. Lawyers have to adapt. We've always adapted and have addressed society's needs. That was how we came about in the first place. Is people created legal relationships with each other. Lawyers didn't exist first. People create legal relationships with each other, and lawyers fill that void. I see so many developers in our space, by the way, that are de facto lawyers because there aren't there isn't anyone else who has the literacy to play that role, and it's a natural role that just forms from through any culture. So yeah, it's critical that we lawyers recognize how important the evolution of language is, and that we don't necessarily shy away from new forms of literacy by using terminology like natural language and program language and going, oh, well, we can just say natural language and who cares about programming language? If you think about what legalese is, it's trying to be as precise as possible. We should be overjoyed that there's programming language around. And if you think about Zabel and Wolffarb, these languages exist because of lawyers. Just a very few of us who want to mechanize law. So let me see here. So yeah, so here's an example of some really interesting technology in the Ethereum space that uses law, or pardon me, that uses blockchain. Here's EAP 2981, which is the NFT royalty. Arguably, that's how NFT became so popular with fine artists, because they could finally make money despite the first sale doctrine. So if they sold a painting for $10 to someone, and then they became really famous, and that person sold that painting for $5 million to someone else, they could then start to get a cut. This was because of the permissionless nature of blockchain. This was always more on the tip side, so people could decide to do that. And when NFT market started to get depressed, then people cut the fat, which was the tips, but then the fine artists left, so it gave a little bit of a boost, and then everything crashed. And at least that aspect of NFTs and the parts of NFTs that remained are more the PFPs and not the the 69 million. Oh, I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, it was really big fine artist people. Okay, but now there's EIP 6968 that's coming in. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but this is it works on the validator level, and so we can think about things like tariffs then, and copyright tariffs, or even potentially patent tariffs, like a malicious layer. That's really exciting stuff that's possible. And we can test this out in a trust environment first with sequencers, just having a traditional contract with them, and then bake it in hard code if you like that. And personally, that's probably a good idea because of what I was saying before. I don't know when this presentation got cut off, but we don't want to automate the law first. We want to mechanize it because we need to understand what it means to move it at this hyper rate, and then we kind of can automate it. So it's okay to have trusting environments first. Here's AVS. This is a way to underwrite more than just what's on chain with digital assets. We can also use oracles, and they're using Objective, which basically means that everything, all the data is on chain, and they're subjective. Some of the data is coming from outside of the chain. And so at Megazoo this last month, we were spending some time deep diving in on that. And then the background I have, it's before hanging out with the Megazoo people, it's more about deterministic and discretionary, which does map relatively close to objective and intersubjective, but it's more focused on the powers of judges and attorneys, not so much on what is blockchain centric and much more remote from it. But they're both very helpful to understand what we can mechanize, what we shouldn't mechanize. So yeah, here's an example that relates to AVS. So it's that underlying security that if the deal goes wrong or what have you, then You can slash, which is penalties. Just the teeth of the enforcement is Monties, which is great for common law, since we prefer Monties to injunctive relief. Here's a really interesting project that uses AI agents with smart contracts. So what I like to think about is a taxi. So again, the car analogy, and so with the taxi, the AI agent is going to be driving the car around, but the contract can be a smart contract with a GPS oracle. So the GPS oracle says, okay, this is where we pick the person up. The person put an escrow, smart contract escrow, so it's pennies. What they're going to pay for the fare to then for their drop off, and then when the car drives to the drop off, the oracle says to the smart contract, "Oh, we're here at the drop off," and then the funds are released from escrow. And so the AI agent, I'm hoping, and if prospers a jurisdiction we could still regulate in, this would be done probably by end of year, but that AI agents like this can be legal persons, so that the agent that's actually driving a car, if it hits someone else, that's really easy writ for tort law, because we just go, a person hit someone else in a car, let's just deal with insurance. Right now, though, a driverless car, right there, right? The driverless car, well, then who's at fault for hitting someone else? And then with smart contracts, in addition to the AA agent being a legal person, it very clearly says what his contractual relationship was not. And dispute resolution, at least initial dispute resolution, can be done within seconds, potentially. The court of last appeal, though, that could potentially take years. I don't know if we necessarily want to cut that off anytime soon. Here's some of my legal engineering projects. CGB, that one, if you go to cgbdb.com, you can look that up. I invented the idea of putting a kernel from the machine level up to JavaScript levels, a high abstraction level. And then the legal part of it was the syntax that I used in script language is a syntax that is based on contract law. It's atomized or a fractal. So what we consider one contract, this is actually contracts next to each other, piecemeal, but it definitely takes the definition clause to heart in contracts and how that's different than all the rest of the instructions in contract. And then Cheerbot, that's what I was working on a lot of, and Megazoo, as well as with Legal Seals and Megazoo, but Legal Seals need some more tech development, including the JSON state standards, and I'm developing. All right, so okay, I think that's it for those slides. Okay, so now on to some examples of how legal engineering, how we're applying legal engineering on staff. So this is signature economies with hierarchical rules. They extend pens. Let me see if I have a pen here. Maybe there's some pens there in Wotan that the team can hand out. But here it is right here. It says signature economies. Anyway, here's some pens. So the point of this signature economy pen, if you think about a wallet, a public-private key on a wallet, that's very much just like signing something. And if you look at kernel community, which is a really great onboarding into Web3, it deconstructs what money means and all these other just fantastic insights. Brilliant people there. Texas Teachers Pension Plan is kind of the legacy that they're trying to emulate. With that being one of the Titan alumni, but this is Andy's work. He's one of the other founders there, and this is definitely more from a literary perspective, but where he and I align is on the mathematician side of things. So I just think this is absolutely brilliant, and how I've taken it, is just from a way more of a literary perspective, and so that's why I like this HATS protocol. So here's some examples I'll go over really quickly with HATS. Then I'm going to have to get on the plane, unfortunately. Yeah, so let's start here with this HAT. So this one's really, really, really simple, but it allows us to have a better sense of how we can have smart contracts and such be much more on the behave like we think they should with law, which is the human is ultimately the center of attention, and not the immutability of some world computer state. And so here by abstracting what people are signing, we can take their hard wallet, their public-private key secret, and we can throw that away, just like we can throw away a pen. So the secret is now obsolete, maybe just because every year you want to have good hygiene and throw it out, or maybe because somebody else now has access to it and they're signing things here and there. Whatever the reason, no matter. By having something like the HAT protocol, we can just take this and then just change who is on the hat, and then point all the different roles, all the different things we want these parties to sign, these people to sign, point them to this hat. So then we just take their aux address. So for me right here, this 077 aux address, if I want to retire it and I'm using hats for everything I'm actually operating, signing on chain, then that's going to be fine. I just switch this out and everything's still pointing to this particular hat. So hats get really complicated. However, this is just a root and a node hat, and I still think it actually has quite a bit of possible. So here's a hat for Life Clinic. This one is one that's getting more and more complicated. It's kind of a sign we've got to watch out for technological craft or dead weight. I can use the term that we use, bloat, I think, or something like that. Anyway, what I'm finding though with this, compared to developers, like when developers are playing legal engineer and when lawyers are playing legal engineer, here's an example of a big difference. So all the different hat trees are being developed, really cool, but and amazing innovation we should definitely take to heart. But they're not really thinking, okay, well, where's the privity between the parties? So here I'm starting to develop the concept. Well, we can have people sign an agreement, like where's an agreement that actually has some. There we go. So you hear this agreement. So it's great that somebody can sign an agreement with a hat, but it's a unilateral signature. So that's more like a waiver or a click wrap, which is also really helpful. But with this concept here, is having the clinic side actually also agree to the agreement, and then having this top hat here being the ultimate. All right, well, that's unfortunate. But anyway, just imagine that agreement. Looks pretty good. Okay, so here's another example. This one is DAO Coalition. So this one's really good because you can have all this, in some sense, KYC. So actually, this Gitcoin thing, it's not KYC, it's Proof of Humanity. There's some problems with Proof of Humanity for sure. It's really days yet, but it also is arguably much more efficient than KYC. Hopefully, we build out. And then there's some other bells and whistles here. Here's an example of something we did where we worked with a client in an operating agreement, and so we figured out what the roles were in the operating agreement, and then we made this tree. A really cool thing, though, comparing notes with developers and how they're kind of reinventing the law in a lot of ways. When we had our retreat with the hats team and chatted with them about the patterns they were using, there was a major overlap in the patterns. Like for instance, having this council hat, we did that because that's what we needed to have as power of attorney. It turns out also that team was saying, well, we need this, we need this as well. So we didn't actually exchange notes, and we ended up having the same pattern here. We have the top color and this other color. And then similarly with these 8 down here at the bottom, that makes sense because people are delegating different roles in the LLC, and it turns out similar patterns are formed on chain with or without the LLC. So one of the reasons is because it's a type of need that is awkwardly not a deliverable and also not a product. So it's too tailor fit to be a product, but it's too active and living to be a deliverable. So one of the great things about the Prosper jurisdiction is we could relatively safely do this gray area of law or development. But now we've kind of had to put this kind of thing on hold. But this is where I see legal engineering going, and where uh, that getting back to the analogy of the horse and buggy compared to the car, where we're in this paradigm shift, because before these roles that lawyers weren't supposed to be a part of, arguably, it's really important actually being able to take on an aspect of this role. And I believe there's also no hiding from this anymore, because yeah, deliverables before could just kind of be these dead static things, but with AI, LLMs, even if we do that, the machines are still going to be able to understand it and turn them into living. So with that, the plane is lined up and I have to board. Again, I apologize about this thing on the fly and not so polished, but hopefully you got quite a bit of it, and the Q&A will be also lively. Yeah, actually a bit of difficult here. So people there, if you can go to nani.oo and Kelly is up to, or just go across Campbell's X account, or what he's tweeting, that would be amazing, because there's some really fantastic work that I didn't set up. Yeah, with that, I'm looking forward to